Well, guess where we are? We are at listener. Where are we? Oh, excuse me, it's not my turn.
Off to a good start. Hello. This is
We're all friends here.
Let's Talk call-in radio. Getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or 8317.
Yes, welcome back, Paul.
Thank you so much. Good to be back in Studio A. And today's stuff. Oh, first of all, at the controls.
Oh, that's right, Stephen Hurwitz.
In full control, Stephen Hurwitz.
We're all friends.
And the lovely Shelley Rugg.
That's me.
Right. And I am here. I'm Paul Raffel. And yes, while I was gone last week, I had a fascinating show here about the MeToo movement. And it ended up being a discussion of women's clothing and what's appropriate and why. And it was an interesting last half hour of that show, I thought. Very
lively.
Interesting calls and lively. So I thought, well, let's kind of continue the gist of that. And so today we're going to be talking about shaming.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Shaming as a cultural phenomenon. Yes. Body shame, fat shame, slut shaming. You can't dress that way. You can't touch someone that way. Well, how shaming, especially online shaming now.
Yes,
I mean,
that's
it's very
everything.
prevalent online.
Well,
how it's replaced sort of regular forms of punishment, or is added to it before the punishment actually comes down.
Also, it's being used as a manipulative tool.
Yes.
To sway, opinions about things. And sometimes it can be really helpful, a really helpful tool to post on Facebook about some wrongdoing, something that needs to change, and to bring awareness to it so that maybe other people can get involved in affecting some kind of positive change. But
does shaming do that? This is the thing. I mean,
no.
As I wrote the blurb this week, and it used to be a punishment was sort of public shaming, where they'd lock you in the stocks or in the pillory or somewhere for a few days. And
there's the good old sit in the corner with the dunce cap on.
The dunce cap. Oh, man. I never wore the dunce cap. In fact, I'm not sure we had dunce caps at my school, but they were certainly a part of cartoon history.
Why was it pointed like that?
It was a cap that nobody else would wear, I guess.
You could almost imagine it as like a spotlight shining down on this person, right?
Yeah, and it certainly had a place in village life, certainly. There were still those village stocks where they used to put people's feet through and they'd sit on the ground.
What culture was that? Was that
in
British?
Europe, yeah.
European culture?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's still stocks on the village greens in little villages all over England.
It's a very cultural thing. If you can look at certain village tribes. I wish I could name a specific one, but where when somebody goes off track, then the whole tribe comes around and they try to find out why. And they have a conversation about it, and they could, work on remediating the problem. And, they all work together and deal with it together. But in this other culture, it's like...
Cruelty, I think, is the word.
Cruel.
I think cruelty is definitely an ingredient today, especially high school. You hear these stories about people, suicides even, as a result of cruel online shaming.
I just watched a show last night about Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, yeah.
And, the extreme shaming that she went through, like, from 0 to 60, in 2 seconds. It was everywhere, the story. And she's still living with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was certainly a campaign of shaming certainly for political purposes.
I saw that interview, and I was just very impressed by her.
Yeah.
She seems to have, really well self-possessed.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too. That I know what it's like to kind of feel destroyed and find your way back. And not because I was shamed, just so everyone knows, but it takes a real letting go and coming back to you as a whole person. I mean, this shaming incident, it was part of something that she was, not the whole her.
Yeah, of course. And a certain bravery in staying in the public eye. I mean,
right.
She runs a non-profit of some kind, right?
Yeah. I think she does like a TED Talk and, talks about this issue. So it can be very destructive. And back to the whole MeToo thing, one of the things we did talk about is that people do lie. And, it can be used against somebody to harm somebody.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Whether they're proved innocent later or not, there's that cloud that's always over people.
Apropos of which, in the paper this morning, Geoffrey Rush, the actor, Australian actor, successfully sued the Fox company, or what's it called, the News Corp, Rupert Murdoch's company in Australia for defamation.
Okay.
He hasn't been able to work for a couple of years because a co-star in a play he was doing, made an anonymous claim of harassment, and the court just found him. There was no evidence of it, or they were not convinced that the woman in question, who later came out and was in the paper against her will, by the way, that she was a credible witness. So I don't know, right or wrong, but his career was, I think he made $40,000 last year after making millions.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And so they are going to have to pay millions for defamation. The judge is going to have them make reparations for what should have been his normal yearly wage.
And so, so a lot of the male reaction to the whole Me Too thing is, oh, poor us. Now we don't know how to act in public.
Really?
Welcome back,
we
Paul.
could lose our jobs if somebody tells on us, whether it's true or not, ruin our lives. Oh, poor us.
Yeah.
And, there's definitely some truth to that. But it kind of forgets about why the Me Too movement was started in the first place.
Exactly.
Is that women have been the ones having to navigate and adjust their behavior so that men don't get in trouble.
Right.
Well, I'd like to add,
Poor men, we're so weak and so out of control, apparently.
Yeah.
When someone
can't help it.
When there's a shapely ankle in view.
Well,
wait a minute.
It's nature.
Well, what about, aren't women shaming each other?
Yes.
A huge component of shaming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does happen, but I think there are a lot of movements right now trying to reverse that situation. That's a positive outcome is when we become aware of something that's not healthy and good for humanity. Then once we become aware of it, we can start to change it. And so I think that's happening.
Well, fat shaming seems to be one of the biggies.
Yeah. My dad, when we would, he had dementia, and so he couldn't control what came out of his mouth. And frequently, when he would see a large person, he would say, "Hey, look at that fatty," And so I always had to be on my toes to try to figure out how to, block that. interaction.
Very good. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Certainly in schools, good heavens.
Oh, especially
Fleets
middle
of
school.
schools. I mean, boys and girls, of course, but certainly we see stories all the time of girls who are shamed because of the way they look or the way they dress or because they're not able to go to things or,
Little boys are too nerdy and too under their books.
Yeah.
They get kicked around. Yeah, we pick on each other. It's, a lot of times, in a way, maybe trying to understand each other, but not knowing how.
I wonder
There's
if
a difference, though,
maybe
between...
we don't grow out of that.
I just think there's a difference between, picking on each other, bullying even, and shaming.
Okay.
Shaming just seems to be of a different quality.
Well, yeah, and it's so rampant on social media because there's distance there between us and them. And, we can say or post pictures of anything with, if it gets hot online, we can just block somebody or, dump the post or whatever we want to do. But we're not having a face-to-face interaction with somebody. And, I would think that if we did, we might not say those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, no anonymity on the web
Punched out.
is a good thing and a terrible thing because of human nature. Humans. Anyway, do give us a call, won't you? 415-663-8492 is line 1 and 8317 is line 2. Give us a call in the studio. Join the discussion about shaming. Have you ever been shamed? Has everybody been shamed? I don't know. Have you been shamed, Stephen?
I'm certain that I have, but we were talking earlier. I think self-shame is a big one. I think back and I remember, very young when I started feeling ashamed about my body. I remember I must have been, 8 years old, 7 years old. And a neighbor, we were close friends, etc., had a photograph of me taken at the beach as 1 year old, and I was naked. And whoa. So where did that come from?
I'd like to see that online.
I wish I had it.
Posting that everywhere.
1-year-old Stephen on the beach.
Instagram.
All naked. Cute.
But
No,
wait.
seriously though.
But
why was I feeling that way?
Well, yeah. What caused that? Nobody said anything like, "Oh, look how
Charles
chubby
Atlas.
he is."
That
You
little
didn't think
peepee,
your parts were big enough. Is that what it is? Oh
guess.
no, they're gonna know.
They saw me.
They saw you at 1 year old.
That's right.
Oh dear.
Oh, dear.
I can hardly speak about it now, actually.
Oh my God.
Oh, no.
I had to get my courage up.
But
I
see-
do want to, thank you for your vulnerability, Stephen. That's awesome.
But what brings that on, though? That's just peer pressure or cultural pressure, cultural norms of what we're supposed to be if we're
7 years
men,
old?
and what we're supposed to be if we're women, if we're...
Right. Well, there's a safety zone in fitting in sameness. And, I remember, in school, there was a certain pair of shoes that everyone had to wear.
Yeah, right.
A certain style of pants, a certain kind of top. And if you didn't wear these things, somehow you were on the outside of that normal place.
Look at here.
Yeah.
Not wearing my uniform.
So,
well, that was the upside when I at school in England. In those days, there used to be school uniforms. Maybe there still are. I don't know.
Yeah.
At government school, publicly run schools, and we all had to wear uniforms, and so that kind of pressure, that kind of peer pressure,
Hey, we got a caller.
didn't happen because we all look the same. In fact, what you did was you took off your blazer and you didn't wear a tie or you wore
had
a
little
sweater
nuances.
or something.
Yeah.
And I'd get told off by the teacher and go, "Oh, you can't wear a shirt."
I kind of like uniforms.
They have a place in schools just for that reason, just that it does away with all that sort of competition over clothing and who's wearing Nikes
and who has money and who doesn't.
And
where my kids grew up, it was
cheap. It was cheap because they were sort of subsidized, not really, but there were breaks on school uniforms at the place you could get them. We do have a call.
Hey, let's hear what you have to say. You're on the air and keep it clean.
Hi there, it's Lyons.
Hello.
Back to the topic of uniforms.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely had experience of being teased, if not actually shamed, by students when I moved into a new town, and I was in the middle of the 6th grade. And so lots of peer pressure. The nerdy science boy was really bullied and treated badly.
Yeah.
I was one of the in that out circle that Shelley referred to.
Uh-huh.
And what I learned from that was really about peer group pressure and how people can be so unkind to each other.
Yeah.
Because there were a few of us in the out crowd, and then there were a few in the in crowd. And then a lot of the rest of the kids, not all of them, but a lot of the rest of the kids were what I called brown-nosing the in crowd.
Mm.
And I looked at that and I thought, wow, don't you have any pride in yourself? Or, why would you debase yourself in that way? I don't think I said debase to myself when I was a kid, but but that's what it felt like. That's what the feeling was.
Yeah, very astute.
And so I've always wondered, and I missed the very beginning of the show, so you may have touched on this already, but do we know from psychology or even evolutionary psychology or whatever they call it, why kids in middle school can be so mean to each other? Where do we pick that up from our parents? I know in my case some of that was. There were adults who, kind of scorned my family for various reasons, and I'm sure their kids picked it up. But what is that about? Is it just that us, them, the belonging thing? Is that our evolutionary biology, the little old brain where the emotions are so raw and unmediated? But
growing up, it's a lot of times about testing boundaries, and I guess we do that in our social circles as well.
Yeah. Anyway. Love the conversation. Great stuff. We ought not be shaming each other.
Right.
No.
For any reason. Even somebody who's done something really bad, it doesn't change it if you shame them. It has to be handled differently.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Lyons.
Thank you.
Lyons. Yeah, the number is 415-663-8492. Give us a call.
Yeah.
Talk about shame.
What about all the shaming that comes with things like poo-poo?
Poo-poo?
Yeah. We have a caller?
Oh, we do?
What
do you mean?
Toilet training, you mean?
Toilet training, yeah.
Wow,
you're
just a bundle.
I'll get into feces later on.
Those poor childhood memories were coming up. Okay.
Our caller, you are on the air. No talking about bodily parts. No, keep it clean.
And what's your name?
My name's MK.
Hi, MK.
How did I know?
Hi. This is interesting. I was a physically precocious child, young person. My body developed very young, and I was in a place where I had a female cousin who was a year and a half older than I was, and she took one look at me and decided that I was not going to be part of any kind of group that she was part of. And one day I was in the bathroom with her, and she was shaving her legs with one knee up and one foot in the sink and the other on the ground, on the floor. And I was looking at her because I didn't shave my legs at that point, and looked at her, and she looked at me, and I said, well, why are you shaving your legs? And she said, well, anybody who's anybody shaves their legs. And I said, well, I don't shave my legs. And she said, well, you aren't anybody. And it was a real stinker. It was a real stinger.
Yikes.
And I think that happens because you're not sure who you are at that age. That's why the middle school kids can be so horrible. you're developing into who you are, and you want to sort of protect yourself. And for some reason, at that age, we lash out.
Yeah.
And as though we're trying to protect ourselves or separate ourselves, but we aren't really, because we want to be part of the group.
I wonder. I must confess, I haven't been doing any homework on these psychological aspects of why we do it, why it's part of human nature to do that. I guess it's as Shelley was saying, it's you're testing boundaries, you're forming associations, and you want to be in your in crowd.
You are.
Yeah, and it's easy to be nasty. Right? It's easy to find the button that's the one to push to make someone feel bad.
I think that peer pressure has everything to do with it, and I think parents have everything to do with it. My mother was a very beautiful woman, but she was very socially insecure. She came from an immigrant family and married into this East Coast, New England place, and thought that she'd done really well. But boy, she was terrified of doing it the right way, you know, and some of the people that she was doing it the right way for were just stinkers. They were awful. And this poor cousin of mine, who was so unpleasant to me, really has had a very unhappy life.
Oh dear.
And that's, ha-ha, frankly.
Is that what he called it? Schadenfreude?
Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, you want to poke a hole in me? Well, I'll just sit back and watch the world poke holes in you.
Yeah.
You can't, the compassion and kindness and all the rest of it, and forgiveness and all of it. I'm sure I forgive her. What the heck?
What about your own shame? Do you have any of this self-shame? I'm confessing when I want to hear
yes,
you.
I think that when the trouble with it is when you're young and beautiful, you have this beautiful child's body or this beautiful young adolescent body. You're so unsure of yourself that at the time of your life when you are the most beautiful, physically in the ideal sort of way, there's no cellulite and no wrinkles and veins and all the rest of it. You don't appreciate it. You don't know how wonderful you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You come along and see your own kids and say, "Boy, are you ever wonderful?" And they're going, "I don't like my hair. I don't like my hair. I don't like my toe. I don't like this, that, the other thing."
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, that is the parent's job, is to support the child rather than diminish them.
Point out
but
their
faults. A lot
faults.
of parents don't. I know a lot. It was being a little kid teacher for years. I met a lot of parents who tried to either live through their children, to live their lives over again because their childhood wasn't happy, so they do all this stuff, and they think that then the kids sort of, they're going, okay, this is my life and this is what you're making of it, but I'd rather live my life. But they don't know that until, I don't know why we do stuff like this. People are weird.
Because we don't know. We have to learn as we go.
I wish there was some sort of chip you could put in people. So didn't have to.
Don't say that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, your dream,
Keep
your
those
wish will
chips
come
to
true.
yourself.
Yeah.
But some sort of genetic massage. Does that make you feel better? That means that so you don't have to learn all this stuff.
I don't know. I guess it must be an integral part of growing up, I suppose, of growing a personality.
Were the children like that? All the pioneer kids that were riding in the Conestoga wagons across the country, or they're just too beat up to do much of anything?
Oh, I'm sure that still happened there.
If you watch Little House on the Prairie, they had a bully girl.
Nellie Olson.
That's right.
Thinker.
Look at your bonnet. It's
there's another, I think, phenomenon that's coming up, and that is the counter fat shaming, is that the glorifying of overweight. Fashion shows for larger women.
Oh, plus size, yes.
Yeah, and organization. I just saw something. I don't know what it was that I picked up recently, but there's this countervailing force of how great it is to be large.
Yeah, I heard someone on the radio the other day who describes herself as fat, and it's kind of like the slut shaming. The protests against slut shaming was to take the word slut back and be proud. I'm a slut and I'm proud, that kind of thing. They're actually taking back the word fat, which has been a no. You can't call somebody fat, but
Right.
now they're saying it's okay to call me fat because I'm fat and I'm happy being fat.
Well, I think that's
fine if somebody's trying to make a buck off of you selling you fat clothes.
well, yeah,
Seriously.
that's definitely the marketing piece for sure. But I think the bigger picture is has to do with the fact that I'm fat and I'm probably going to be this size for a while. I already have been most of my life. And so for me to go through my precious life feeling like there's something terribly wrong with me and that everyone is looking at me sideways and watching me put food in my mouth like that's a crime, that...
Well, yeah, my family always treated overweight people like they had lost some sort of control of themselves.
Right.
That, that it was a weakness.
That's right.
Exactly.
And of course it isn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
I met
like a cookie too.
I was in New York City and I was standing waiting for a friend, and this man from, I'm going to say Sweden or something, Norway, was standing next to me, and we were just watching people walk by, and he turned and he said, "Wow, there's a lot of really large people in America.
Well,
We don't have that where I come from."
well, that's the other side of it. There is a huge an obesity crisis right now, and you can say somebody is fat, but that doesn't mean they're healthy.
Well, and it also doesn't mean that there is something terribly flawed about them.
Right.
There's all kinds of reasons that all of us have our flaws. A lot of times it comes from our genetics, the way we were raised, the food we were fed. There's so much.
Diet programs that are available that you have to pay for, and I believe that they don't want you to succeed, because if you do, you don't want their program anymore.
Of course.
Yeah.
They sort of set you up to fail.
Yeah.
So you'll continue to dislike yourself.
I take issue with that.
For your
but
lack
that's
an
another
awful thing.
story.
control or whatever, and they've got you by the short hairs, as the old saying goes.
Oh, no.
Well, thank you, MK.
Yes, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for calling.
See you later.
Okay, bye.
The number is 415-663-8492 or 8317. If we get two lines going, it's even better. And we do have a caller on line one. But I just wanted to remind everybody our Spring Pledge Drive is coming up. Starting
That's
Friday
right.
for 10 days. It's our 20th anniversary on the airwaves. And we have a large goal to make this time. So any donation you can make. And you can always, by the way, you can always donate online at KWMR.org. And you can even tip your favorite show.
Like this one.
Yes. So if you're enjoying the show, think about going to KWMR.org and hitting the tip this show button. Give us a tip.
Anytime.
Should we hear what our caller has to say?
I think that's a good idea.
All right. You are on the air.
Hi, guys. It's
Your name,
Mia.
please?
Who is it?
It's Mia calling.
Hi, Mia.
From Point Reyes Station here. Just a quick thing. I missed the first half of your show, so I do not know what you talked about. But I know that it was a shaming topic, and I wanted to just recommend a new show that I found very lovely. It was Adie Bryant from SNL, just starred in Shrill. Have you guys heard of it?
Yes.
And I just really enjoyed it. And it was a big topic of it is about accepting your own body. So I just found it, like, the tone was really nice. So, yeah.
Say the name again.
Shrill, it's called Shrill, SHRILL, and it's on Hulu.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Adie Bryant from Saturday Night Live. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for the show.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you, Mia. The number is 415-663-8492.
There can be, it's not just fat people who might be shamed or feel ashamed. The fact is that it doesn't matter what body type you have. You can decide it's not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big part of it. And so, again, raising the awareness so that we can recognize that we can tell ourselves a different story.
I've thought about the muscle builders that way, that, maybe they never feel like they have enough.
But see, then we're kind of also sort of judging them. We're
Right.
coming up with a story about why they look the way they look, which may not, in fact, be true. And I think that we do that to everyone. And that's one of the things we were talking about the other day with what people wear and how they're perceived, and you were bringing up, about presenting yourself because, there are people who make a living styling people so that they'll be more successful, right? Because we know that people do have their first perception of you. They make judgment. They make up stories about who you are. And they did an experiment. I saw a video of this. They took a little girl and they put her out on the sidewalk and they dressed her really nice. And she stood there, and in moments, people walked up to her and said, "Are you okay? You're alone. Where's your mom?" And started trying to help her. Then they took the exact same child, put her on the sidewalk, and made her look like a homeless girl in, raggedy clothes, and made her dirty and uncombed. Not one person offered to help her. And the child who did this, it affected her, even though that wasn't the real her. She felt that. And so this is what we do to each other. We judge each other on that first impression, and we make up stories. That's a big part of what we need to look at. I mean, there's reasons. It's like to keep us safe. Well, no, it's all right.
I think the point I was trying to make last week was that we send these messages, and to pretend that you're not aware of the message, or if you aren't aware of the message that you're sending, that's not. You need to wake up and realize, that you are sending a message, whatever that message is. You may not perceive it as the same message that someone else is receiving, but I think the way we dress, like you said, these are signals. People pick things up, and I think that what we don't understand, or maybe we want to get into that a little bit, was that women might dress in one way and they might get a response that they are not asking for. And I think one of our callers would say they need to take responsibility for the message they're sending, not necessarily that the response is appropriate.
Well, and the thing is, with any kind of communication, there's half of that is the other person's receiving of the information and translating it through their own filter. And so, we can't go around imagining what everyone is thinking. Everyone's going to perceive us actually differently for their own reasons. And so, to a certain extent, I wouldn't wear certain things to a job interview, and I wouldn't wear certain things to the beach. But I can't really control how other people perceive me, no matter what I do.
True. And as you were saying earlier, the thing we make up stories, that whole thing of first impressions is really someone looking at someone as they walk in and going, "Who?"
I think, though,
she must be hot in bed. I mean, this is how men's minds work, right? A woman walks in with a cleavage showing or something, or a shapely turned ankle, and suddenly men are just making up their stories and getting excited about the whole thing. And there are men who cannot control themselves. It's psychotic behavior, but there it is. So it's certainly not the fault of the clothing. It's certainly not the fault of the women for wearing that. There's a wonderful series of exhibitions all over the world of clothes worn by rape survivors.
Interesting.
That just shows what they're wearing, and it's it's usually sweatpants and T-shirt or
right.
Well, we know that's a myth.
Yeah. But it is still, apparently, that one of the first questions that a rape victim gets asked. What were you wearing?
I think the answer might be to have women cover their bodies head to toe.
Yes, exactly.
Including their face.
But we judge people for doing that, don't we?
Yeah, well, sure.
It's that's weird. Yeah, they're weird. Yeah.
It is weird. And
again, it's another. My story about that is that it's keeping men quiet, keeping so they don't get aroused by the sight of an arm or something, or or lips.
Well, in that case,
it's ridiculous.
But in that case, is the woman deciding that's the way she wants to present herself, or is her spouse or family deciding that for her?
Most
I guess
of the time,
depends.
it's a cultural thing or a religious thing. But women do say I've heard women to wear that full. Whatever it's called, I've forgotten.
Hijab,
chandur. That they feel better when they're wearing it. Of course they do. It's what they've brought up with. But they feel safe. They feel...
Well, and speaking of feeling safe, I think that's really the main reason that we do judge each other at first. That initial judgment is so that we can make a choice. Am I safe around this person or not? Mm. And maybe that's something women do more than men, but I think it's an innate characteristic that is designed to keep us safe initially. But, we have to go a little deeper before we actually know people. People can look safe, and then they fool us, and they kidnap us, and things like that.
Why do those doctors always wear that white jacket? There are symbols that people wear. They've just been associated with something or other. In the workplace, there you can dress to convey competence, and you can dress in ways that might make feel that you can't do your job.
That, again, you're coming back to perception, because when push comes to shove, reality is going to tell another story. You can dress great and not be good at your job.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And there are, in some workplaces, there are certainly, if not rules, there are certainly guidelines as to how you should dress if you want to get ahead. And women are under great pressure to look good all the time and wear high heels.
Yeah, the high heels thing
among
just
everything
gets
else.
me.
Well, we got a caller.
An ex-local, Summer Brennan, has just written a book on high heels, by the way. Anyway.
Okay. Let's see who it is.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, folks. It's Charlie. How you doing?
Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
I'm really enjoying the show, and it triggered something inside me. The metaphor that I can use for this is being an athlete and playing baseball through the semi-pros and in the softball leagues here. And you could always tell the people that felt like losers because they had to win. Because if they won, then they wouldn't have to deal with the feelings of being losers. And I think there's something similar about shame. I think there are all these tangential things that people do. Maybe they drink, maybe they act out in some kind of way, or get into dope or something like that. But I think that it's not just shame alone, but it's also what people do until they realize to free themselves from the shame. And I think that there's a whole study there about what people do to not deal with the feelings of shame.
Yeah.
And the silence is deafening.
We're listening, Charlie.
Yes, well, I appreciate it.
No, that explains...
I think that human beings do that. I think that in order to not be reminded of something that doesn't work for them until they are able to work it out, we do other things to sort of distract ourselves from what it is we don't want to deal inside ourselves.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, for me, I think, when Stephen was talking about the internal shaming, I think I can kind of pull out little phrases that were planted into my being when I was a child. Dad's comments about my large rear.
Oh, my God.
Mom making a comment about Grandma letting her teeth rot out of her head. I think about that when I'm having problems with my teeth, and I feel shame. And it was like just this little moment that just hit a nerve and stuck. And then it comes back up.
That's interesting, because I was just thinking about Charlie's comment about softball and baseball and winning. It's motivational. So the other side of shame is that it goes to what you were talking about with your teeth. It goes towards motivating us to do something. I can't imagine that every runner who wants to win, improve their race, feels like a loser. But it does explain why I was lousy at softball.
Dear, oh dear.
Well, that's the thing. We can't. I think.
What else can I say
I
about
think
myself?
Charlie might be offline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Charlie, you
Oh,
gone?
I'm still here.
Oh, you're
no.
there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll hang up if you want.
No. I was just wondering. While we're all talking about our the experiences of, especially with body shaming or self-shaming about our bodies, I wonder if anybody has not gone through that in their childhood. How about you, Charlie? Were you ashamed of your body?
Well, I was always smaller than the other boys. And as far as I was concerned, I was just looking at the world from inside out of myself, and I didn't really think much about it. And one time somebody commented on it and said, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, I'm the same size that my mother is. My dad was 5'11", but it taught me something. It really didn't hang me up at all, but it just taught me that anybody who gets teased about being quote-unquote different or not part of the group, it taught me to stay away from those kind of judgments on people, because there were some people that like to tease me about being smaller than them, vertically, and I sort of said, the hell with it. I don't care. I'm who I am, and you are who you are, and if that's all you got, then you can go with that, and I'll go with what I got,
That's very good. If only everyone reacted that way.
Yeah,
That's
really.
Yeah, at least on that particular issue.
Right. Yeah, right. That's great.
I'm the
Charlie.
only one talking about that.
No, I'm thinking about when I was growing up. I was tall and skinny and, all leg, and I had red head. Oh, boy. Although I never really got teased about being a redhead, but I just thought, I'm so different. But I was tall and skinny and no good at sports. So they would, in fact, there's a little memory that's come up. We were forced to do sports days. You had to pick something that you could do. I used to do shot put because I was so tall. But I remember I was running around the track. We were required to do a relay race. And I was running around the track, and our PE teacher called out, said, "Here comes Raffle running like a spastic."
Oh, no.
Wow.
Nice guy, huh?
Yeah, really nice
This was
guy.
the same guy who would not let me play soccer because I was no good at it, but would put me in goal because I'm tall and have big hands. And he would dribble the ball all as close as he could get to me and then fire it at me as hard as he could. Tiny little guy he was.
Yeah.
What a meanie.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm sorry that happened, Paul.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, just one more comment
Yeah.
real quick. I think that, as far as parenting goes also, it's really, you'll never really reach your child completely if you cheap them in public.
Yes. that's
like if
very
they
true.
reach up for something in the grocery store and knock over a bottle of pickles or something, and in front of a bunch of people, you shame them.
Right.
It's I'm the adoptive father of two sons, and it just hit me early on that I didn't like to be treated that way if I was, and that your kids will never really completely open up to you if you cheap them. That's the way it is. It's just people say, well, how do you what's the best way to raise kids? Well, treat them the way you would want to treat an adult friend. Don't cut them down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially. Yeah. Anyway, I'm hanging up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
Charlie.
for calling.
Charlie, and we have another caller, by the way.
That's right.
Here you are. You're online, and
you're on the air, caller.
Oh. And your name, please?
David.
Hi, David.
We'll try and watch my language.
Thank you.
Said something
Shame because I didn't.
Is there anybody who hasn't been shamed about themselves or their bodies? And I recall something of when I was in probably fifth grade, something that happened that could have just devastated me and might have devastated somebody else if it had happened to them. Charles Atlas was on the back.
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of comic books and stuff, and it was an image. This muscular guy in a leopard skin, tight. I don't even know what you call it.
Bathing suit.
Big muscles. Well, I came to school one day. There was a cutout of Charles Atlas with my face, and I weighed probably, 91 pounds, and I was a skinny kid. I mean, I was the skinniest kid, and that was making a comment on me.
Yes.
And I came to school, and I just thought it was hysterically funny. And, I laughed along with everybody else. And why I laughed along with everybody else rather than going into the bathroom and slitting my wrist, I have no idea.
Because you were the guy kicking sand in that other guy's face.
Yeah, well, there was that. But, different people take the same bit of shaming or criticism or whatever, take it in very different ways.
Sure.
That's right.
Sure.
And
well,
interesting how that happens.
I think that's partly what Charlie was talking about. Maybe it's partly to do with the way you're raised and how you're taught about interactions with other people and how to feel confident in yourself. And
I'm not sure that I was raised that way. I don't recall any being given any guidance or instruction. My father was gone. My mother was depressed, so there wasn't anybody around to help me out in that kind of sense.
You just have a good sense of humor, and always have.
Well, good sense of humor, but is it, I don't know, I always wonder, is something like that genetic? Because
It could be, yeah. Absolutely.
All kinds of things that are genetic that we look at in our lives. And
yeah, I mean, things that happened to my great-grandparents, I'm sure, are still having an impact on me today. How they dealt with things got passed on. And, in each generation, I think, creates a little bit of evolution within that pattern. But there are things that are just sort of feel like they're innately in us, and we're not really sure why.
I'm going to sign off. Thank you, by the way.
Hey, David, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, is it innately within us? That's it. It's why do we like to shame? There's a certain joy that you get out of seeing someone uncomfortable, I guess. That's part of human nature.
Well, I say the opposite of the shaming is that you feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. It's a power play.
And then you look at, not naming names, but there are people in government and in the top levels of industry. Where is shame gone? Wouldn't shame be a perfect response to some of the stuff that's going on right now?
Well, I think there are people out there trying to cast shame, but it seems to fall on deaf ears.
It's like shame and guilt are a hand in hand, but guilt is slightly different. They're not even... whoever I'm talking about does not admit guilt and certainly don't feel that they are wrong to have done what they're doing.
I think the president relieved his national security advisor, and on the way out, made fun of his big ears.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. This is a specific issue. It's about animals, animals in general. And I have a friend who's vegan and an animal healer, and she's very active in talking about how animals should be treated in the world. And I feel sometimes that her approach is very much in a shaming way. People who treat animals like this should be ashamed of themselves. And it's sort of this gray area of, again, how you were raised. I mean, so in my family, when we had a dog, the dog hung out outside, and we'd take the dog for a walk, but it had a house in the backyard, and that's where it lived. It didn't live in our house. But a lot of people feel that their dog or their cat is really a true member of the family, and so they are very well cared for inside the home. And so the shaming would be, leaving that dog outside shame on you. I mean, that's just one little piece, a silly example, but I always felt like, maybe you could reach people who don't completely understand your perspective a little more easily if you weren't so shaming about what they do, because people don't always realize that what they're doing maybe isn't the best choice.
Well, you bring up something, though. What's the difference between shaming and criticism? If the dog was, and I'm just projecting, was actually suffering from being out, if the dog, it was inappropriate for the dog to be outside, then maybe that's just really criticism, not shame on you, but hey, this dog needs to be sheltered. I've changed my view about animals. I would want animals to be very well loved and cared for, and because of that, I don't keep one.
Sure.
Yeah.
The responsibility of it all.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Having another life to look after.
That's right.
Give us a call, 1-415-663-8492. We've got about 4 minutes left, so give us a call about shame. I wonder if, talking about things like that, is there a place for shaming? Because, keeping a dog outside is not illegal. There's nothing you could actually do about it. You couldn't. You can't call the police and say they've got a dog in a kennel. You'll go, yeah, well. But I wonder, is shaming, can it be a good thing?
Yes,
if
probably
people still,
so.
The Scarlet Letter, or M, that Peter Lorre movie, he was a murderer and they put a red M on his jacket.
Gosh, what's the ultimate shaming is what, to be like sort of banished, right, from your community.
Right. Well, that's kind of what that does. That Scarlet Letter thing was to
you're not
show
welcome
you're
here.
Not really part of this anymore.
Yeah.
But is there a place for it? I don't know. Community service?
Well, I guess...
Is that a kind of shaming, or is it just instead of sending someone to prison, to jail, you...
Not necessarily, because
shaming.
you can't tell from the outside if somebody's there because they're doing time.
Right, true.
You really can't.
There are photos that I've seen this week of people who have shoplifted at Walmart. They have a placard. You stand outside with a sandwich board, and you said, "I was caught shoplifting
Really?
from Walmart," and they stand outside the store. And
Walmart posts this?
No, it's on the web.
Wow.
It's everywhere.
Well, I know I've also seen shaming.
Is there a place for that? Get caught shoplifting, instead of calling the cops, maybe you make them wear this thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess that one could make a case that it could be a valid tool for change. But I think one could also make a case that there's always other ways to do anything. There isn't just one answer. And I think going to shame is a quick, it's sort of a gut level response to treat things that way.
I think shame, though, it's a pejorative. I think that's really there are things that you can look at two things and see whether one is how it's handled and how it's delivered, and I think that's the difference.
Some parents have done this to their kids. They post things on social media to shame their kids into changing their behavior.
Oof.
We have a caller. Do you think we have time for that?
Just a quick call.
Okay.
You're on the air.
Say hello.
In about 2 seconds.
Martine and Bolinas.
Who is this?
Martine and
Martine,
Bolinas.
hi.
Hi, Martine.
Just a quick thing about what alternatives to shaming is.
Nice.
When someone does something that we don't like, or that in some way impinges on our reality, that to help them figure out. What am I getting a big echo here?
Oh, because the other line, there's a caller on the other line too, so you're hearing their radio.
I don't know if we're going to have time for that.
Yeah, we won't have time.
Get them to turn their radio off?
Well, we're just going to have to let the other caller go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Too late.
Okay, go ahead, Martine.
So just help them figure out what need they're trying to meet by the behavior, and help them find some other ways that would work better to meet that need.
Excellent.
That's my statement.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling, Martine. Bye-bye.
So, this has been Let's Talk. Thank you to all our callers and listeners, and KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Spring Pledge Drive coming up. Give often, give plenty. And we'll be back next week. Oh, by the way, in May, we'll be moving the show to noon to 1.
That's right, lunch hour show.
Lunchtime. You'll have no excuse for not calling in. Ha! I shame you. Anyway, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and